e nei ngā roe mata o tā whiri mātea. Nō reira, maranga mai, e ngā hoea. E takoto nei, i tēnei takiwā, ara me ta maumaharatanga ki a rātou. O ngā ope taua o Ahitereiria, i haere mai ki ngā wainganau ki api. I tēnei, te iwi kai. Nō reira, maranga mai. Me tangata kere. Aura tāngata tāi me tiraki e ki tāngata uta. E rā hoki rā te korape nui, te korape roho, te wāhia wa te toitoi au. Whakamauta mai ki ara ko turu, kora wakata mai ana ai te ara. Ko ura ka pamau, ki kua te tamaki hoki te ura hoi, te tāngata mahi. Tēnei te nini, tēnei te nāna, tēnei te hano te tukua, apinanga tai tau nei, tōne rei te iwi whakaro o whakaro. Whāmai nei mātou, whakawātea, Kalapare! Ha! Kau maharatanga, o ngā hoia, o Aotearoa, o ngā hoia, o Aotearoa i haere mai ki te āwhinau te iwi, i roto i tēnei takiwā, i runga anō i ngā kārangaranga, o ngai tāua i tā wāi a rātou. Tūturu whakamaua ki a Tina. Tina! Huia! Kahui.
Your Excellency, Dr. John Zabriskie, New Zealand High Commissioner to Malaysia, distinguished and invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans. My name is Bill Russell. I served in the 1st Battalion of the New Zealand Regiment and was based in Malacca from 1961 to 1963. And today I am your MC. It was in 1955 that New Zealand sent its SAS force to Malaya to counter the communist attacks against the people of that country. This was followed by the deployment of the 1st Battalion of the New Zealand Regiment in 1957, and who in turn were replaced by the 2nd Battalion of the New Zealand Regiment in 1959. Both these regiments were stationed in Taiping. The 1st Battalion of the New Zealand Regiment reformed and were deployed in a purpose-built camp at Tarandak Camp near Malacca. In 1964, with royal approval, the New Zealand Regiment became known as the Royal New Zealand Infantry Regiment, and so 1RNZIR was born. It was this regiment that spearheaded New Zealand's contribution in the conflict known as confrontation. At the same time, the Royal New Zealand Navy constantly patrolled the Malacca Straits and the South China Sea. Almost all of its blue water ships at some stage patrolled this region during the Malayan emergency and confrontation. In Singapore, the Royal New Zealand Air Force kept 2 squadrons of aircraft. One was a squadron of Bristol freighters and who ferried essential supplies, and the other was a squadron of fighters, namely Venoms. This contribution came from a country with a total population of 3.5 million people at that time, and a combined armed forces of approximately 15,000 personnel. New Zealand has long been a country that takes its international obligations seriously, and in this conflict it did so. Today we are gathered here to commemorate our service to the people of Sarawak and Malaysia and to give thanks for the peace that followed. I now have pleasure in asking Dato Lim to say some words.
The Royal Malaysian Police selfless contribution to fight for peace.
Oha, tra. Ika sayu, ni hao. Kaora, selamat datang. Your Excellency, the High Commissioner of New Zealand to Malaysia, Dr. John Sabriksky, members of the police, the armed forces, particularly the veteran, Dato, Datin, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you all, especially our Kiwi friends from New Zealand, flying in from the Pacific Rim and Australasia region of the world to Kuching, the city of unity in Malaysia, Borneo. We wish to extend our gratitude and blessing to our Kiwi veterans. Many of them look like me, gray hair. And also members of our armed forces, the Royal Malaysian Police, for their sacrifices, selfless contribution to fight for peace, unity and freedom that we enjoy today, not forgetting their wife and members of their family for their suffering, anxiety throughout the security operation in Borneo. I must say we are very grateful and privileged to have our Kiwi Malaya New Zealand Veteran Association, MNZVA, to come forward for choosing Kuching, Sarawak to install their first historical commemorative plaque in the world here today. This is a sweet and enduring gesture, particularly to all the friends they have at the border of Sarawak. Ladies and gentlemen, we have kept warm in our hearts over the years our long friendship and cooperation between our countries and our people of New Zealand and Malaysia, in particular Sarawak, because we take great pride in keeping and promoting our beautiful and sacred birds, the kiwi and the kenalang. You know they both have unique beats, which is so special in the world of nature. Not only that, we also share the education in New Zealand since the Colombo Plan period. The Torrens land court system in our land and survey administration, and above all, doing the our Commonwealth Brotherhood, whereby our Kiwi defender were here during the confrontation period. So much so, thus I feel very proud standing here this morning before you to reflect also the days I spent my time with the security operation that at that time, 1963 to 1967, they carry their rifle fighting the intruders. I carry my little pen doing the sidewalk operation with them to win the heart and mind of the masses. We are then held in suspense, so much so that we never at any 1 second ask, are you Kiwi, Aussie, British? Because we share the same dream and mission for peace. Ladies and gentlemen, with this nostalgic sentiment, we try to recall in the past. In the days during the White Raja, we have Mr. John Knock, a Kiwi, who worked as surveyor under the Raja's Sabina Group time. He was later appointed as Sarawak Secretary of Defense to face the World War II, the Japanese invasion in 1941. During the Japanese occupation 1941, he was imprisoned in the Batulintang Prisoners of War Camp Kuching. After the war, Mr. Knock was Director of Cooperative Movement or Department that result in the great success of our Heng Hoa Fishing Cooperative. A road named as Jalan Knock, many of you may like to visit after this, at the Bintawa, at the what you call Sungai Apong. Sungai Apong Penin stand today in honor of Mr. Knock. We are happy that with this warm diplomatic relationship, our Sri Lankan brothers has also tightened their knots with their Kiwi better half and vice versa. Ladies and gentlemen, we are today blessed to have this bond of comradeship that brings Sarawak through to have great understanding of the cruelty of law and human conflict, to build up our culture of harmony, unity and peace. We are very happy and proud to share here in Kuching the forthcoming International Peace Summit organized by the Junior Chamber of Commerce, JCI, on 6th of September in Kuching. We wish to thank you all, particularly our Kiwi friend here, Mr. Bill. He has been suffer forth and backward in email to get everybody come here. I am very happy that today we have big crowd, that this small little place has not space enough for everybody. I think your presence here show your commitment to peace, unity and harmony. And with that, I will call back the memory. Agi hidup, agi ngelaban. Agi hidup, agi ngelaban. Agi hidup, agi ngelaban. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I would now like to ask Mr. David Benton, President of the New Zealand Malayan Veterans Association, to reply.
Thank you for your kind words. I acknowledge the presence today of His Excellency Dr. John Kuching. Greetings to you, sir. To all our visitors and distinguished guests, on behalf of the New Zealand Malayan Veterans Association, it is my privilege to offer our thanks and gratitude to you for allowing us the opportunity to be here to unveil a plaque of remembrance. The pleasure and the privilege is ours. Long may the friendships, the bonds, and the trust of both nations continue. Once again, I thank everyone for your presence here today and acknowledge all veterans. Once again, thank you very much. Terima kasih.
We now start our ceremony proper, and Senior Chaplain Mr. Kevin Herawini, a veteran of the New Zealand SAS, is now the Senior Chaplain in this group and will lead us in the opening of prayer.
Selamat pagi. Shalom. Kia ora. And so, welcome. You have welcomed us so warmly that I could not help but bring our New Zealand heritage in our midst, sir. And so, as strangers we meet, built upon those relationships from our ancestors, and some of those young ancestors are here today, on that side and on this side. And so I invite you to pray with me. Let us pray. Eternal God, quiet our minds, still our hearts, strengthen our lives, inspire our spirits in your living water that flows endless grace. God of the world, we come before you on this day, this special day of reunion as friends and family, to reminisce and to rekindle those bonds of comradeship which began in Malaysia during the Malayan emergency and the subsequent deployment of New Zealand troops to Sarawak during 1965. We come in gratitude and humility, giving thanks and pray that these lasting friendships will last forever. And the many blessings that we receive, none more so than freedom, family, shelter, food and friends, and our respective communities, and the beauty of our respective countries. We gather today to give thanks for peace and freedom primarily, and to dedicate a memorial to the honour of our countrymen who were instrumental in bringing peace to Sarawak. May our burdens be light, our blessings many, O Lord, our strength and Redeemer. Amen. And I bring with me due respect from the commander of 1 New Zealand Special Air Service Regiment, and indeed those SAS soldiers past and present. And from the commander of 1 NZSAS, he regrets he's unable to join us today. Thank you.
We will now have our opening hymn, How Great Thou Art. You may remain seated, and it will be sung by Laura Munan.
My God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the works thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the roar
Thank you very much. I would now like to ask Colonel Retired Kim Hosking, a former Border Scout and considerably involved in the period of confrontation, to address you.
I'll be as brief as I can, but there's some things I need to say. Good morning, gentlemen. Selamat pagi, datin, dan where is he? To the Border Scouts who are here today. This, I'd like to remind people, is not a sad occasion. This is not a memorial in the sense we are remorseful about what happened or who the New Zealanders left here. Today is a commemoration, a time to remember with some pride the New Zealand soldiers, sailors and airmen who came to Sarawak in troubled times, now more than 50 years ago, did their job, did it well, and then left without losing a soul. Some of those who were here then are here again today. Our job is to make sure that they, their comrades in arms, their effort, their professionalism and their commitment are not forgotten. My job is to explain very briefly something of how they came to be here in Sarawak during confrontation. First, though, you may wonder why I'm here and why it's me who's doing this. I came first to Borneo with the Gurkha Battalion in 1964. I was then transferred to the Sarawak Constabulary, as it was then, as a Border Scouts officer in Limbang. And I stayed in Limbang with Pengulu George Siga and the two Border Scouts who are here today for the next 3 years. While I was here, I met a New Zealand SAS officer who told me that when confrontation ended, I should join the New Zealand Army. I did, and within months I was in Vietnam. But that's another story. So I have a foot in both places, in Sarawak and in New Zealand. In fact, now I stay in Bakallalan in Ulu Sungai Kuching and live there with my friends. First, though, I need to make an apology to the New Zealand veterans. The veterans asked Border Scouts where their medals. Despite the fact that Border Scouts and their families were on the border for 3 years during confrontation, no medals were ever awarded to them. I had no medals for confrontation. As I said in my introduction, my job is to provide background to why New Zealand troops were here in Malaysia and in particular Sarawak during confrontation, as Dr. Savandrio called it, and to do so from a New Zealand perspective. To put more simply, to tell you why the veterans sitting here today were here then, and in doing so explain why there is this commemoration today. Some of you may know, and some of you like me are old enough to remember, that the 1950s and 60s, the Cold War dominated international security concerns. With the Soviet Union on one side and China, and America and its allies on the other, the threat of war was never far away, either with them or their surrogates. Despite their geographic isolation, and still it's a 12-hour flight from Kuala Lumpur to Auckland, both Australia and New Zealand were caught up in the Cold War, more directly when it became hot. Both countries, for example, sent troops to Korea when the North invaded the South. In fact, this was not surprising. New Zealand has, since its foundation, sent forces overseas, first to the South African War, First World War, and the Second World War, where at the latter stages it fought with the Americans in the Pacific. I'd like to talk about one or two of the connections between Sarawak and New Zealand. Most people don't realise that the two countries were founded at about the same time, the 1840s. Both then entered a period of internal conflict which lasted for decades with the indigenous population. It ended with what both countries would what I'll call governance by outsiders. But I'll put that. There's a more personal connection too. Tom Harrison has already been mentioned. Tom Harrison was British, working with the Australian group that parachuted into Barrio in 1944, the first Allies to land here during the Japanese occupation. His second in command was a New Zealander, Eric Edmeades. And it was Eric Edmeades who took the surrender, organised the surrender, of the last Japanese force to surrender in Sarawak at a place called Longlangai in Bakallalan, where Pengalu George is from. That site is largely, and story is largely unknown. Moreover, as Māori discovered when they came here, they have a relationship with the Orangulu in Sarawak, particularly Iban. They share a penchant for tattoos and of similar design, and their language base is from the same root. The only word I can think of at the moment is Makai in Iban, Nanamoja of Iban. Makai in Iban is Kai in Māori, the same root word. And they are related, distant. Closer to home, the 50s and 60s were also years in which Malaya gained its independence. Sarawak was in political transition from Brooke to colony to independent state, and Malaysia was formed. At that time, as we've already been mentioned, British, Australian and New Zealand forces were based in Malaya and Singapore. First, to counter the communist insurgency in what is now known as the First Emergency, and secondly, to provide regional security underpinned by the Southeast Asia Treaty Organisation. Some of the veterans who were in that first emergency are here today. In the early 1960s, with communist-inspired insurgencies in many parts of this region, an emergent Indonesia under President Sukarno, with communists of connivance, was pushing his political boundaries, adopting a stance against Malaysia and what is called neo-colonialism. The process of Malaysia and forming it was not without trouble. In 1962, Azahari and others in Brunei staged their revolt in December. There were also parts of Sarawak and Sabah adjacent to Brunei which joined in that revolt. It was put down by British forces from Singapore and Malaya and Hong Kong, but not before Limbang was taken and lives were lost. International Kalimantan Utara. This event and the wider political ambitions which Indonesia was pushing at the time triggered a direct response from Indonesia, and it was the announcement by Dr. Subandrio of confrontasi with Malaysia and aimed at upsetting its formation. At the same time, communist-inspired tensions erupted in areas southwest of Sarawak, where we are now, and the Kalimantan border, with police posts raided, Kalimantan's son was killed, and a whole series of other security incidents happened. Britain, as guarantor of Malaysia's security, and not wanting to see the process of forming Malaysia disrupted, deployed a number of battalions, a significant number of battalions, to Sarawak and Sabah and Brunei. It's no surprise then that the Australian and New Zealand battalions and the Gurkha battalions in 28th Commonwealth Brigade in Malacca were eventually deployed here too in rotation. For New Zealand, the use of its battalion and other service assets was based on an understanding with the United Kingdom and with Malaysia. As 1RZIR was already in Malaysia, in New Zealand, hardly an eyebrow was raised. They were here, let them do a job. There was no political comment, adverse political comment in New Zealand from the general population about their commitment to New Zealand. I'd like to point out that New Zealand had no particular quarrel with Indonesia, but it did have an interest in the security of the region and in particular Malaysia. As we've heard, 1RZIR deployed twice to Malayan and was engaged in some serious, if spasmodic, border incidents while building a strong relationship with the local population. Nearly all of the border incidents in which they were involved resulted in successful outcomes for the New Zealanders, resulting in several bravery awards. It's also worth remembering that the New Zealand SAS detachment, the NZSAS, were here and were involved in border patrolling with their British and Australian counterparts. In addition, there were New Zealanders attached to the British and Gurkha units here, one of them winning a very high bravery award for his service on the border with Gurkha. Two aspects of New Zealand's history in Malaysia tell a story. First, some 20,000 New Zealand servicemen and women have served in Malaysia, 20,000 over the period. Secondly, at the time of confrontation, New Zealand only had one regular infantry battalion, and that it committed to Malaysia. But what of the soldiers who came here? Why did they come? They'll probably tell their own story, and I'm trespassing here on what might be dangerous ground. My memory says that the soldiers of 1RZIR and the NZSAS who came here were simply professional soldiers with a job to do. As professional soldiers, their motivation, if anything, was a resigned acceptance of the task, a willingness to do what was asked of them, some interest in going where they had not been before, and of course the expectation of some excitement and trepidation of operations, of going to war, even in a small way, in what was considered then a just cause. That their lives were on the line, that there might have been casualties, was an unstated reality that they all understood, but treated with differing degrees of acceptance and indifference. None of this diminishes their contribution. They gave all they had and achieved what was asked of them, generally with a wry sense of humour, the support of the local population, and the humanity that Kiwi soldiers are known for. Who could ask for more? That is why we're here today, to commemorate this contribution to Sarawak's well-being. Terima kasih.
I would now like to ask Padre Kevin Herawini to lead the Borneo veterans into reciting the Ode for a Wandering Warrior.
And to our veterans from Borneo, it is my privilege to lead you as we recite this wonderful rendition of the Ode for a Wandering Warrior. And it was crafted by Mr. C.A. Jennison, former member of the Australian Special Air Service. Together. May your spirit roam where the eagles soar. May it finally rest on that immortal shore where the wandering warriors long to plead for all eternity. May your shadow remain in our infinite care. May your stories be legend wherever we share. May your memories stay engraved in our heart. May your friendship and love never from us depart. May the running waves, the quiet earth, and the shining stars recall your worth. And when we are not, with no one beside, with our own true spirit wandering wide, may you greet us, the good things renew, and may we become wandering warriors too. And just a tribute from the New Zealand Special Air Service, ke horo te marino, ke papapaunu mu te moana, ke tere te karohi rohi I mua hoki wā tātou huarei. So may the calm be widespread, and may the sun glisten like greenstone as it ever dances across each of our pathways. Thank you.
Before I ask Dr. Subritsky to unveil our plaque, can I explain a little bit of protocol regarding the cover? The cover that is covering this plaque will be handed to the President of the New Zealand Veterans Association. It will be taken back to New Zealand and hung in a place of honour as a link between your country and ours. So it's not that we're going to reuse it, it is a link between your country and ours. So if the media could make way for Dr. Subritsky, please.
Good to hear you. To the stability of this area, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
This plaque commemorates the contribution made by the New Zealand Armed Forces to the security of the people of Malaysia, and especially Sarawak, from 1964 to 1966 during confrontation. No New Zealand lives were lost during that campaign. Contributing New Zealand forces were 1st Battalion, Royal NZ Infantry Regiment, 1 Ranger Squadron, NZ SAS, HMNZS Taranaki, HMNZS Otago, HMNZS Heckleton, HMNZS Royalist, HMNZS Santon, 14 Squadron RNZAF, 41 Squadron RNZAF. Lest we forget.
I now have the pleasure of inviting the New Zealand High Commissioner to Malaysia, Dr. John Subritsky, to address you.
Distinguished guests, serving officers, veterans, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this wonderful invitation to be here at this very special ceremony this morning. It's truly a great honour to have done just what I did, unveiling the special plaque So thank you so much for inviting me, the veterans, to do that this morning, and to be with you, and to your invitation for me to speak. So it's wonderful to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, this year marks the 60th anniversary of New Zealand's diplomatic relations with Malaysia, so it's been an opportunity for us to look at all that the two countries have achieved together, and also where we're at today and where we're heading for the future. When I talk to my Malaysian friends, I do say there are a number of other countries, of course, that are also celebrating the 60th anniversary this year. And so I mentioned to them that, of course, New Zealand and Malaysia have a deeper relationship going back even further. And I mentioned in that respect education. We had the first Colombo Plan students from Malaysia, including Sarawak, go to New Zealand starting in the early 1950s, but also particularly defence and our defence contributions. And that, of course, started back in 1949 with the 41st Squadron taking part in the emergency conflict. And rapidly after that, throughout the 1950s, we had units on land, sea and air involved in the emergency. I want to pay particular mention of the New Zealand SAS, which, as I understand it, its first campaign, I think, was in the state of Perak in Malaysia during the emergency. It was where it was first founded, where it first went into action, and acquitted itself with great distinction. And many units have come after that. Of course, the New Zealanders then returned, particularly to Sarawak, during the confrontation period. And looking back on those two conflicts, emergency and confrontation, they lasted around about 15 years. And I think looking back on it, we tend to forget. I'm sure the veterans here are well aware, but some of us who weren't involved tend to forget just how difficult, how challenging those campaigns were. And so I want to acknowledge the sacrifices that were made during both conflicts. In talking about defence and the role that defence has played in the bilateral relationship, the veterans here are a living embodiment, an example of basically one of the crucial foundations of this relationship that makes it particularly special between New Zealand and Malaysia, and also including in that between New Zealand and Sarawak. So it is great to have you here this year, and it's wonderful that you'll be joining us in Kuala Lumpur as well, and taking part in the Merdeka Day parade. We also, as I said, remember the contribution that was made by New Zealanders and the sacrifices made by New Zealanders in this country. We do so every year during Anzac Day, of course, which is held at the National Memorial in Kuala Lumpur. And we also do it when we have ministers visiting. We recently had in May the Minister of Maori Development, Te Aroa Flavel, and he made sure that, and he wanted to be, that it played part of his program, that the very first event that he did was to visit the Commonwealth War Graves at Sharats and Kuala Lumpur, and with Defence Advisor Captain Rob, he went around every single grave of the New Zealanders, both Maori and Pākehā, to pay respects for those that had travelled before us and for the sacrifices that they have made. As the New Zealanders present are aware, the government has determined that for those families that wish it, the bodies of the New Zealand servicemen buried here in Malaysia will be repatriated to New Zealand. I'd like to just note here our thanks and gratitude for the Malaysian authorities for the care and respect they've shown those graves over the time that they've been interned in this country, and we look forward to working very closely with the Malaysian authorities so we can return those bodies back to New Zealand with all the dignity and honour that they undoubtedly deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, when I read military history, I was taken by one story that dates back to the Second World War. New Zealanders are aware of this, but for our Malaysian friends, the New Zealanders took part in the North Africa campaigns, were part of the British 8th Army. And there is a story of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel visiting a prisoner of war camp, and he was talking to a New Zealander, a New Zealand soldier, a prisoner of war, and he said, "Why are you here fighting? Why are you New Zealanders here? Don't you know that this is a European war?" And I guess we don't know the response of the soldier, but if I can sort of put into his shoes, why are New Zealanders sent, why do New Zealand soldiers and Defence Force personnel often be deployed so far away from New Zealand when often our country has not directly threatened itself. And I think it's because we believe in justice and in peace and in people being able to live in peace without being threatened by violence and by being forced to do things and being forced by various political persuasions or whatever at the point of the barrel of the gun. And we have done that in our past, and I'm sure that we'll continue to do that in the future as part of the international community, so that terrorism does not reign, that terrorism does not dictate how people should act. This morning we remember and honour all those that came before us, all the New Zealanders who came during those conflicts and did not return home. We remember and honour all those of our Commonwealth allies, particularly our hosts here, Malaysia, who also fell during those conflicts. And we remember and honour our former opponents who are now our friends, who also lost people in these conflicts, and particularly confrontation. We remember them all. Thank you once again for inviting me to be here, lest we forget.
We come now to the laying of wreaths, and my mentor Dato Lim tells me that the Sarawak wreath will be first, followed by the Army, followed by the police, followed by New Zealand. Following that, there will be an opportunity to lay poppies in front of the plaque, and I remind the New Zealanders to form up and present them in groups of 6.
Gracious God, let your eternal light and perpetual light shine upon those we love and see no longer. May they rest in you in peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, please stand for the last post.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sebelum saya teruskan, saya memperkenalkan sedikit tentang diri saya. I am Penghulu George Sigar Sultan, penghulu Kawasan Baklalan, sebuah perkampungan yang ujung negeri Sarawak sebelah nun. Kurang lebih ada ratusan ribu meter dari sini ke tempat saya. As Master Screen emphasized just now, during the competition for 2 years, he was officer in charge for Sarawak Border Scout 5th Division. After beliau left, when the competition is over, I was take over from him as officer in charge Sarawak Border Scout untuk bagian kelima. Salam sejahtera dan selamat pagi untuk kita semua. Mereka meningkat usia namun tidak tua. Berbeda dengan kita yang semakin menua. Umur bukan lagi menentu bagi mereka, walaupun tahun silih berganti. Pada ketika terbenamnya matahari dan ketika menyinarnya mentari pagi, kita akan senantiasa mengingati mereka. Kita akan senantiasa mengingati mereka. Terima kasih.
E kore rātou e kau mātuatia, pēne i a tātou kua mahui honei. E kore rātou e ngoi kore, aha koa pēhea i ngā āhuatanga o te wā. I te hekenga atu o te rā, tai noa, i te arangāke i te ata, ka maumahara tunu tātou kia rātou. Ka maumahara tunu tātou kia rātou.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them, lest we forget.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now sing the national anthem of New Zealand, followed by the national anthem of Malaysia. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, before I ask Apatoro Tahi to pronounce the benediction, I just want to tell you a little bit more about some protocol. Following the benediction, one of our kamatuas, that's one of our elders, will perform a mihi. Mr. Joe Matani will perform a mihi, and it will be in the language of the Maori people, Te Reo. In this protocol, he recognises the people of this land and the land itself. He acknowledges with thanks your hospitality and respect for us. At the conclusion of his mihi, a waiata, which is a short song, will be sung expressing his thoughts that he has already given us. So that will follow the benediction.
That he has already given us. So that will follow the benediction.
The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face to shine upon thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. Amen.
Tihewa Maudiora. The whai te marama tihewa Maudiora. Haere tonu ne ta wairoa tātou kai hanga I roto I a tātou, wairanu I a tātou. Gloria kā koe e pā. Nā re reng, ngā reo I ngā mada I ngā hui ngā tangata. Haere mai tātou I roto tēnei hiko I roto tēnei wāhi tapu. Ko te whakaara ko tahi. Kia maumahara I rātou o tātou mate. Ngā hurangia tēnei o tātou kohatu. Ngā kororo rapa mai nā runga tēnei wāhi. Nā reira, koe tēnei. Ngā rangatira noho mai nei. A koutou te iwi. A tātou no Aotearoa. I kaue mai o tātou tūpono o tātou te iwi a te pō. Koe tēnei, o mohi mai tātou te ua hoki. Nā te ariki I runga I a tātou. I roto tēnā hotanga ko tahi anō tātou I roto I a tātou. Glory to God in the highest and peace to God's people on earth. We glorify you, we thank you. We know you are here present today. Thank you for all our ministers who glorify the Heavenly Father and bless this holy place, this sacred place we are here standing today. So we say thank you to all the dignitaries, to the families, to the Navy, Army and the Air Force. We are here present today from New Zealand, and it's an awesome sight to see. We are sharing the same thing, the ultimate sacrifice for peace, and peace is love. Nā reira, e kore rā muta te mihi kia koutou. Haere tonu te aroha roti a tātou. Hoki ati ngā mihi o tātou mate, koutou te iwi o te pō. Koe tēnei ko tāe mai Aotearoa, kia maure mai ngā roi mata te hupe, kia māringi mai runga I a koutou. Nā reira e moe a kouti roto te ariki. Hoki mai kia tātou, e mihi nei e tangi nei, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou. E hara, I te mea no Aroha no ngā tupuna I tuku iho te whenua he oranga mo te iwi no ngā tupuna I tuku iho Te hihi e te tūmana ko kia noho mai te wairo o tātou ka hengai roti a tātou, wairani a tātou, tēnā koutou. Kia ora mai ka, tēnā koutou. Black money! Black money, right, and smile! Right, left! By the front! Right, back!
you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes this service. Thank you very, very much for your attendance.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have lunch served. Because of limitation on numbers, we have delivered it to veterans and ranks above NCO. That's the lunch served. But please, if you could come up to the Sriracha Club. It's in about an hour's time. If some of you want to go back, the rest of you might just want to march up to them. Is that okay with the thing? The details are correct? Yeah. So our numbers aren't very limited, so it gives you a chance for veterans on both sides to have a chat.
Flag party! Out! Flag party! Fall!